Silence is often misunderstood. Many think of it as passivity, weakness, or a lack of something to say. But in truth, silence is one of the most profound expressions of inner strength. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of deep awareness. When you choose silence intentionally, especially in emotionally charged situations, you reclaim power that would otherwise be scattered in words, reactions, and impulsive decisions. Silence allows you to control the emotional climate of your world, not because you're avoiding conflict, but because you understand that not every battle deserves your energy. When a woman learns to master the art of silence, she becomes unpredictable. And in that unpredictability, she becomes magnetic. Most people are loud when they feel insecure. They talk to fill the space, to avoid being misunderstood, to gain reassurance, to assert themselves. But silence says, I know who I am. I don't need to explain myself. That energy alone can shift the dynamics in a relationship. A woman who can sit with her thoughts without rushing to prove, defend, or overreact emits an unshakable confidence. She doesn't have to raise her voice because her silence speaks louder than words. In a world that constantly demands a reaction, silence is rebellion. It's clarity. It's power. Men by nature are wired to pursue. When everything is made available too easily, the desire to chase diminishes. If a woman constantly vocalizes every thought, emotion, or grievance, there's no mystery, there's no curiosity, there's no chase. But when a woman becomes still, composed, and intentional with her words, she creates space. And that space becomes the very thing that drives a man's attention back to her. He begins to wonder what she's thinking, how she feels, why she's suddenly distant. That curiosity turns into fascination. And fascination turns into pursuit. It's not manipulation, it's self-respect. There is something incredibly powerful about not reacting. Imagine a situation where your partner pulls away, becomes cold, or even ignores you. The natural tendency is to confront, to ask why, to demand answers. But what if instead of giving into that emotional urgency, you paused? What if you said nothing, observed everything, and let your silence do the talking? That moment of restraint does more than words ever could. It sends a message that you are not emotionally dependent on someone else's actions. You are not shaken by the storm because you are the calm. When you are silent, you're not ignoring, you're evaluating, you're reflecting, you're observing. And when you observe without reacting, you gain clarity. You begin to see patterns, intentions, and truths that words can often hide. Silence exposes what noise tries to cover. It gives you an aerial view of the situation, and that perspective is what puts you back in control. You stop being emotionally entangled and start becoming emotionally intelligent. There's a difference between shutting down and being silent. Shutting down is rooted in fear or avoidance, but intentional silence is rooted in wisdom. It's the knowing that every reaction doesn't serve your growth. It's understanding that when you stay silent, you're not suppressing, you're rising above. You're allowing the situation to unfold without interference, without forcing it to go your way, and that in itself is a sign of inner mastery. Men chase what they can't immediately access. They are drawn to energy that's peaceful but not passive, soft but not needy. When a woman stops over-communicating and starts communicating through her energy, her boundaries and her presence, she becomes unforgettable. He starts to sense her absence even in her presence because she's no longer emotionally tied to his every move. That shift in energy wakes him up. He starts to chase not because she played games, but because she played it wise. Your silence invites him to step up. It's an open doorway for him to re-engage with your mystery. And most importantly, it puts you in a position where your energy is no longer wasted trying to be understood by someone who isn't listening. When you choose silence, you remove the noise and give him a chance to feel your value, not just hear about it. And trust this, people feel your absence louder when they were used to your noise. Their silence becomes the echo of your worth, reverberating in their mind long after the conversation ends. Being silent also creates space for your own healing. Instead of reacting from pain, silence allows you to sit with your feelings. It gives you room to observe what triggers you and why. It slows down time so that you can process, not panic. And in that processing, you begin to detach from what doesn't serve you. You stop giving away your power in exchange for momentary relief. You no longer speak just to be heard. You speak when your words are aligned with your truth. And that's where the shift happens. You start to live from the inside out, not the outside in. You don't speak to impress or prove. You speak to express, but only when it truly matters. That type of restraint makes your words golden, your presence valuable, and your energy royal. Men are not used to that. They're used to noise. They're used to over-explaining, begging, and chasing. So when you present silence wrapped in grace, you stand out. You become the experience, not the explanation. You become the question he can't answer, the calm he can't find elsewhere. And in that quiet strength, you begin to lead the energy of the connection, not by force, but by frequency. Not by demand, but by demeanor. Not by noise, but by knowing. Because when you are silent by choice, you hold the power of mystery, the power of restraint, and the power of a woman who refuses to lose herself for anyone. Softness is one of the most misinterpreted traits a woman can possess. Society often teaches that to be respected, to be taken seriously, one must be loud, aggressive, or dominant. But real power, lasting, magnetic, undeniable power, doesn't come from force. It comes from self-awareness. It comes from grace. It comes from an inner knowing that does not seek permission or validation. When a woman is soft, not out of fear, but out of choice, she becomes unforgettable. Her energy doesn't attack, it invites. Her presence doesn't chase, it attracts. Softness isn't weakness, it's refined strength. A soft woman is not a fragile woman. She's a woman who has mastered the art of emotional control. She knows how to respond without reacting. She knows how to be kind without being a doormat. She knows how to set boundaries without becoming hard. She doesn't need to yell to be heard. Her quiet confidence makes her voice carry further. Her gentleness doesn't make her naive. It makes her aware. She sees everything. She feels everything. But she chooses what to give her energy to. That level of self-discipline is the foundation of real feminine power. Men are deeply moved by softness, not the performance of it, but the truth of it. They are disarmed by it. In a world that constantly demands performance, where people are always trying to impress or prove something, a woman who is simply herself becomes a sanctuary. Her softness is not a lack of intelligence or ambition. In fact, it often requires more strength to stay soft in a harsh world than to become cold. Coldness is easy. It's a defense. Softness, on the other hand, is a decision to remain open-hearted in the face of disappointment, to stay grounded even when others try to provoke you. A soft woman knows when to speak and when to be still. She knows that her tone can heal or destroy, and she chooses healing not because she can't fight, but because she knows her worth doesn't require conflict. She doesn't chase people. She doesn't beg for love. She doesn't scream for attention. She doesn't operate from desperation. Her energy says, I know I am valuable, and I don't need to prove it. That silent self-assurance sends a signal that's louder than any demand. She becomes rare, and what is rare is always chaste. There's an invisible strength in a woman who can stay soft when everything around her is trying to harden her. She has cried, she has been disappointed, she has been overlooked, but she did not let those experiences change the texture of her spirit. Instead, she became more selective, more refined. She doesn't give her energy to everyone. She doesn't over-explain herself. Her softness becomes sacred because it's not for everyone. It's reserved. And that makes her mysterious. That makes her intriguing. That makes her powerful in a way most don't understand until they feel the loss of her presence. Softness is power because it doesn't fight for control, it is control. A soft woman doesn't need to outshine anyone. Her light is internal. It doesn't flicker when others try to dim it. It shines quietly, steadily, persistently. And that light calls others in. It pulls them closer, not because she demands attention, but because she radiates peace. People crave peace more than they admit. In a world full of chaos, noise, and competition, a soft woman becomes the calm in the storm, the safe place, the warmth in the cold. Men will chase a soft woman because they cannot easily figure her out. She doesn't react like others do. She doesn't compete. She doesn't argue. She doesn't explode. Instead, she holds herself. She listens more than she speaks. She chooses her words wisely. She walks away when her peace is at risk. And that calmness, it haunts a man's mind. It lingers. He begins to wonder why she didn't beg, why she didn't fight, why she didn't lower herself to get his attention. That curiosity becomes desire, and desire becomes pursuit. Because he realizes that she carries something that can't be faked. Depth. Being soft also means being in tune with your emotions without being ruled by them. It means feeling everything deeply, but not allowing those feelings to dictate your behavior. It means knowing that you don't need to be hard to protect yourself. You just need to be aligned with your truth. And in that alignment, you make decisions not from fear, but from clarity. That's why softness wins. It's not naive, it's intentional. It's grounded. It's the result of inner work, not outer performance. A woman who is soft but firm is not someone people walk over. She's someone people remember. She doesn't need to prove her boundaries with force because her energy speaks for her. She doesn't need to argue her worth because her presence confirms it. Her silence is not a sign of weakness. It's a reflection of wisdom. Her patience is not a sign of submission. It's a demonstration of control. Her gentleness doesn't make her invisible. It makes her unforgettable. And when a man encounters a woman like that, he begins to shift. He senses that this is not the kind of energy he can mistreat. Not because she will scream, but because she will simply remove herself. Not because she will threaten to leave, but because she knows her peace is more valuable than temporary validation. That kind of softness is rare. That kind of woman is rare. And anything rare becomes a treasure. Anything rare must be chaste. When a woman chooses silence, not out of fear or insecurity, but out of wisdom and inner calm, she steps into a power that few understand but all feel. Silence, when used with intention, speaks louder than any words ever could. In a world where people are addicted to noise, where everyone feels the need to explain, defend, and argue, the woman who remains still becomes a mystery. And mystery is magnetism. Silence makes people lean in. It invites curiosity. It makes them wonder what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and more importantly, what they missed in you. A man cannot ignore a woman who chooses silence over drama. He may not understand it at first, but it will sit with him. It will echo. It will follow him. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is emotional control refined into an art. When a woman is silent in moments when others expect chaos, she's not suppressing her feelings. She's mastering them. She knows that her response is her power. She understands that silence is not passive. It is active resistance against the need to be reactive. It is a message that says, I'm not giving you my energy just because you expected it. That kind of silence forces a man to reflect. It holds up a mirror. Because in your stillness, he begins to hear his own thoughts more clearly. He starts to feel the weight of his actions more deeply. You are not yelling, not texting long paragraphs, not pleading, and that absence of noise becomes louder than any argument. A woman's silence is like gravity. It pulls without effort. It doesn't chase, it doesn't push, it doesn't demand, it just is. And in that being, it becomes irresistible. A man is wired to pursue what feels just out of reach, what he cannot fully grasp, what doesn't beg to be held. When you're silent, you become the unanswered question. You become the space that he wants to fill. You become the calm after the storm, the still water that reflects back everything. Silence shows him that you are not desperate, that you are not controlled by his inconsistency, that your peace is not dependent on his attention. The silent woman isn't emotionally detached. She's emotionally matured. She has likely said too much in the past. She has over-explained herself to people who were committed to misunderstanding her. She has fought for love that wasn't reciprocated, begged for closure that never came, cried to prove her value. But now she's done performing. She knows her value is not up for debate. She knows that silence is often the most dignified response to disrespect. And so she retreats, not because she's weak, but because she's powerful enough to walk away from what doesn't honor her. There's an energy that follows a woman who knows when to go quiet. It's not indifference, it's elevation. She's not trying to win a battle. She's already moved beyond the battlefield. She doesn't compete for attention or validation. Her silence communicates something deeper. I'm unavailable for nonsense. I'm not here to fix what I didn't break. I'm not participating in cycles that drain me. And that clarity becomes seductive. It forces a man to evaluate, to reconsider, to chase. Men expect women to react. They expect emotional outbursts, long speeches, and breakdowns. That's what the world has conditioned them to anticipate. But when a woman chooses not to respond in the usual way, she shifts the entire dynamic. She disrupts the pattern. And in that disruption, something powerful happens. He starts to question himself. He starts to chase the closure he thought. He starts to replay her silence in his mind, looking for meaning. That silence becomes a puzzle he feels compelled to solve. The most powerful form of communication often happens in silence. It's the pause after betrayal, the absence after disappointment, the space created by detachment. And in that space, reflection happens. Growth happens. A woman's silence is not a void, it is a boundary. It is her way of saying, I'm done negotiating my worth. I'm done speaking to be heard. I'm now choosing to be understood through my absence. That kind of energy is unforgettable. It lingers. It causes a man to chase not just the woman, but the peace she brought. Being silent doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean swallowing your truth. It means choosing your peace over proving a point. It means knowing that not every battle is worth fighting, especially when your silence says more than your voice ever could. It means allowing people to sit with the weight of their choices without cushioning it with explanations or emotional rescues. Silence creates contrast, and contrast creates desire. When you are always available, always responsive, always vocal, your presence became expected, but when you go quiet, your value becomes undeniable. That's why silence is so powerful. It allows a man to feel the absence of your energy. It gives him the space to recognize how much he relied on your emotional presence. And when he finally realizes that your silence wasn't an act, it was a decision. It ignites a fire within him. He wants to know what you're thinking, where you went emotionally, what he did to lose access. And now he's chasing not just to get a reply, but to reconnect with the energy that once made him feel alive. Softness is often misunderstood in a world that glorifies hardness, aggression, and assertiveness as the only paths to power. But softness is not weakness. It is strength expressed in its most elegant form. When a woman embraces her softness, she taps into an ancient wisdom that doesn't fight for control, but influences through presence. She doesn't raise her voice. She raises her value. She doesn't demand attention, she attracts it. A soft woman walks into a room and shifts the energy, not because she forces it, but because she carries an energy that speaks of peace, grace, and emotional maturity. That kind of softness is disarming. It invites, it awakens. It draws the masculine toward her without effort, without manipulation, without noise. There is a quiet power in a woman who no longer needs to prove herself. She's been through the storm and realized that her gentleness is her superpower, not her weakness. She's no longer trying to be louder to be heard. She's learned that being softer allows her to be felt. And a man, when faced with that kind of presence, cannot help but take notice. Because she's not playing the same game as everyone else. She's not screaming to be seen. She's not demanding to be loved. She's simply embodying the energy that so many men secretly long for. Peace. Peace in her voice, in her touch, in her silence. That peace becomes the most magnetic quality in a world filled with chaos and noise. Being soft means you are in control of yourself, not others. It means you have learned to influence the atmosphere without having to dominate it. You know how to speak from love, not ego. You understand that softness isn't about submission, it's about inner freedom. You choose not to be reactive because you've done the inner work to heal the wounds that once caused you to lash out. You've learned that a raised voice doesn't command more respect, it often reveals more pain. So you speak calmly. You move with intention. You radiate calm confidence that can't be faked. And that energy stays with a man long after the conversation ends. A soft woman understands timing. She knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to lean in and when to walk away. She doesn't force outcomes, she flows. And because she's so grounded in who she is, she doesn't chase anything. Not love, not validation, not attention. She attracts what aligns with her vibration. And men can feel it, even if they can't explain it. They'll say she has a vibe or an aura, not realizing that it's her softness that's captivating them. Her softness makes them feel safe, seen, and soothed. And that feeling is addictive. Softness, when authentic, is not a mask. It's not pretending to be sweet. It's not performative. It's a deep inner calm that comes from knowing your worth so profoundly that you no longer need to overcompensate for it. It's the energy of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to offer. And when you're in that space, men will come closer, not because you beg them to, but because your energy becomes a healing space. You become the calm after their chaos, the home after their wandering. And that kind of emotional presence is rare. What men often don't say out loud is that they're tired of fighting. They're tired of competing. They're tired of masks and games. What they crave is softness, not just in voice or touch, but in spirit. They crave a woman who listens without judgment, who speaks without venom, who loves without condition. And yet, it's precisely that softness that many women have been taught to hide, suppress, or abandon. But when you reclaim it, when you embrace it fully, it's like giving him water in a desert. He didn't even know how thirsty he was until you arrived. The woman who is soft doesn't need to overpower anyone. She lets her energy do the work. Her presence is felt without her having to announce it. Her silence is golden. Her words are few but meaningful, and her actions come from intention, not reaction. She's not interested in competing for a man's attention because she knows that she doesn't need to. The right man will recognize her essence. He will sense her depth, and he will pursue, not out of obligation, but out of desire to be near what brings him peace. That's what softness does. It opens hearts without force. It invites vulnerability. It creates a space where love can be real. Softness is intelligence. It's knowing when to hold space and when to draw the line. It's understanding that you don't lose power by being kind. You gain influence. The soft woman is not naive. She's discerning. She sees through the games, but she chooses not to engage. She knows her boundaries, and she honors them silently. She doesn't need to announce her standards. She lives them. And the man who is aligned with her energy will naturally rise to meet her where she is. He will chase her not because she manipulated him into doing so, but because he feels better in her presence than out of it. When you move through the world with softness, you don't beg to be chosen. You become the one who is unforgettable. Your energy lingers. Your memory burns gently in the heart of the man who felt your peace and lost it. He'll try to find that feeling elsewhere, but he won't. Because it wasn't just what you did, it was who you were. You became the calm he never knew he needed, and that, more than anything, is why he will chase. Not the body, not the voice, but the softness that made him feel like home. When you detach emotionally, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were once wrapped up in someone else's validation, attention, or affection. Detachment is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about stepping back into your own power. It's the sacred space where you stop allowing someone else's behavior to dictate your peace of mind. It is the silent withdrawal from emotional chaos and overthinking, where you no longer feel compelled to fix, chase, or explain yourself. You recognize that your energy is a currency, and you begin to spend it wisely. Detachment is where you begin to heal from the inside out, not because someone gave you closure, but because you gave yourself permission to let go. Emotional detachment is misunderstood because people think it means you don't care. But the truth is you care deeply, just not at the expense of yourself anymore. You've stopped allowing someone else's presence or absence to determine your value. When you detach, you rise above the storm. You stop reacting to breadcrumbs, to mixed signals, to the highs and lows that once had you spinning. And in doing so, you become powerful. Because now, you're no longer in emotional bondage. You're free. And freedom changes everything. When a woman detaches, a man begins to notice what he once took for granted. Suddenly, your silence is louder than your words. Your absence speaks volumes. Your peace becomes your boundary. He no longer gets to feed off your emotional availability whenever he feels like it. You're no longer orbiting around him, waiting for validation. You've returned home to yourself. And that shift is not just felt, it's magnetic. Because detachment creates contrast. He remembers the warmth, the attention, the softness, and now it's gone. And in that silence, he begins to question everything. What's most powerful about detachment is that it shifts the dynamic without needing confrontation. There's no need for dramatic conversations, ultimatums, or accusations. You simply stop showing up in the way you used to. You stop answering every message right away. You stop being available for someone who isn't available for you. You stop pouring into a cup that never poured back, and the absence of your energy becomes the loudest wake-up call he's ever heard. You didn't yell. You didn't argue. You just chose yourself. There is an elegance in detachment that cannot be replicated by emotional outbursts or pleas. It's graceful, it's dignified, it's composed. It says, I love myself more than this. And when you stop moving from that energy, everything changes. You stop overanalyzing text. You stop wondering where you stand. You stop trying to prove your worth because you already know it. And from that place of knowing, you detach. Not to teach him a lesson, but to protect your peace. And ironically, it is in that detachment that he begins to feel your worth more than ever before. Men are instinctively drawn to what they cannot control. When you are fully emotionally invested, he may have taken you for granted. He knew you would always be there, always forgive, always give another chance. But detachment changes that. It creates unpredictability. It creates mystery. It creates distance. And distance awakens desire. He starts to wonder why you're no longer reacting, why your energy has changed, why you're not chasing, not trying, not explaining. And that wondering creates a pull, because now he sees you as someone he could lose. And that fear activates his pursuit. Emotional detachment is not a strategy. It's not a game. It's not about manipulating someone into wanting you more. It's about restoring balance. You detach because your soul is tired of waiting. Because you've realized that no one is coming to save you. You save yourself by stepping back, reclaiming your power, and choosing peace over pain. And in doing so, you no longer beg to be chosen. You choose yourself fully, unapologetically, and without compromise. That kind of self-respect creates a gravitational pull that cannot be faked. You don't have to stop loving someone to detach from them. Love and detachment can coexist. You can care from a distance. You can wish them well from afar. But you no longer let their presence or absence control your emotions. You stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. And that shift is monumental. Because now your joy isn't conditional. Your peace isn't borrowed. Your worth isn't fluctuating based on someone else's treatment of you. You've become solid, centered, grounded. As you continue detaching, you stop chasing clarity from the person who confused you. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop giving energy to someone who doesn't know what to do with it. You learn to sit with the discomfort of withdrawal and allow it to transform you. And in that sacred space, you rise. You stop asking why and start declaring never again. You stop seeking answers outside and begin listening to the wisdom within. That's where the transformation happens. The irony is, once you detach and stop chasing, you become the one who is chased. Your value increases in his eyes because you're no longer accessible. You've reclaimed your time, your energy, your emotions. You become a mystery again. and mystery is powerful. You're no longer responding to crumbs because you've learned you deserve a feast. You're no longer crying over potential because you've embraced reality. And that reality is this: detachment is a love letter to yourself. It says, I choose me. And when you make that choice, everything begins to shift in your favor. There is something magnetic about silence. It holds power, not because it is loud, but because it is intentional. When you become silent, you are not withholding your voice out of fear or weakness. You are choosing to redirect your energy inward. You are choosing to stop explaining yourself to those who misunderstand you on purpose. You stop defending yourself to those who already made up their minds. You stop seeking closure from the same place that caused your wounds. Your silence is no longer a lack of response. It becomes the response. And in a world that constantly demands your attention, silence becomes a form of self-respect. Silence is not passive, it is assertive. It is the voice of someone who has learned that not everything requires a reaction. You begin to notice how your silence unsettles those who were used to your emotional labor. When he pushes for a reaction and finds none, he starts to feel the emptiness of the space you once filled with your attention, your affection, your presence. He begins to remember the warmth of your words, the way you used to check in, the way you used to make sure everything was okay. And suddenly, when it's all gone, when your voice no longer reaches out, he starts to question his own silence. He starts to feel the vacuum that your absence creates. This is the quiet power of a woman who no longer plays the emotional game. She has nothing to prove. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't scream to be seen. She simply removes herself. She disappears from conversations that go nowhere. She stops participating in dynamics that drain her. And in doing so, she becomes unforgettable. Because when someone is used to your constant availability, your silence feels like thunder. It reverberates through their mind. They wonder what happened, why you changed, why you're no longer reachable in the ways you once were. This form of silence is not bitter or angry. It is dignified. It comes from a place of knowing your worth so deeply that you no longer need to explain it to anyone. You stop arguing with people about how they should treat you. You stop repeating yourself in the hope that they'll finally hear you. You stop lowering your standards just to feel close to someone who doesn't meet them. Silence becomes your standard. And with that silence comes peace. Not the peace that comes from others behaving the way you want them to, but the peace that comes from letting go of control, of expectations, of illusions. When you master the art of silence, you learn the power of observation. You start to see clearly. Without the noise of emotional entanglement, you see the patterns for what they are. You see the push and pull, the hot and cold, the manipulation disguised as love. And you stop participating. You stop giving life to dynamics that were never meant to grow. You observe without reacting. You listen without absorbing. You witness without engaging. This is the strength that silence cultivates. It strengthens your inner world until your outer world no longer has the power to shake you. To the man who once had you emotionally entangled, your silence is unsettling. It signals that something is different, that he no longer has access to your mind, your heart, or your time. It forces him to confront what he has lost, often without you having to say a single word. And that realization, that quiet recognition, often sparks the chase. Not because you manipulated him, but because your absence now speaks louder than your presence ever did. You've stopped performing. Stop showing up just to prove your love. You've taken the spotlight off him and turned it back onto yourself. And in doing so, you become rare, valuable, desired. People often chase what they can't predict. And silence creates unpredictability. It interrupts the usual rhythm. If he was used to you initiating, he now notices your withdrawal. If he was used to your emotional availability, he now feels the distance. He may try to provoke you just to see if there's still a reaction, just to confirm if you still care. But the power of silence is that it doesn't flinch. It doesn't chase. It doesn't seek approval. It simply remains grounded in the truth that your worth is not up for debate. This doesn't mean you're indifferent. It means you've grown. It means you've elevated beyond the level of emotional reactivity. It means you understand that your energy is sacred and not everyone deserves access to it, especially not those who mistake your kindness for weakness. Silence is the quiet armor of a woman who knows what she brings to the table. She doesn't have to announce her worth. She doesn't have to raise her voice to be heard. She doesn't have to beg for love. She simply aligns herself with people who recognize her value without being told. In this silence, something else begins to bloom. Your intuition. You start to hear your own voice again. The one that was drowned out by overthinking, by over-explaining, by emotional confusion. You begin to reconnect with your inner knowing, the part of you that always knew what felt off. And from that space, you gain clarity. You see who genuinely wants to be in your life and who was only there for what you gave them. You stop holding on to people out of fear. You stop compromising yourself to avoid being alone. Because silence teaches you that solitude is not empty, it's full of truth. Let him wonder. Let him feel the shift. Let your silence speak the language of self-respect. You are not ignoring him out of spite. You are protecting yourself from emotional erosion. And the more you embrace this quiet strength, the more powerful you become. You become less reactive and more reflective, less needy and more sovereign, less available and more valuable. This isn't about getting him back. It's about getting yourself back. When your silence is rooted in self-love, it becomes louder than any word you could ever speak. And that silence, that sacred pause, often draws him back in ways words never could.